Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I'm still slowly working my way through Queen & Company's brand new shaped card kits. Next up on the list is the watermelon kit. With summer right around the corner, this just seemed like the perfect kit. I do have a link provided in the description box for this kit along with all of the other shaped card kits. For my first card, I'm using a paper collection by Queen & Company. This is their Petite Patterns. I love the rainbow of colors. All of the shaped card kits include 4 of the shaped card bases, the acetate, and also the foam. So you're just going to pop the foam out and then you'll pop out the inside piece, and that's where you're going to put your shaker toppings. And then you'll adhere the acetate on top to seal those toppings in place. The card bases are already scored, so they're very easy to fold. I do like to use my bone folder just to get a nice crease. Now for this card, I will be assembling it with the card base open, so it's lying flat. It's a little easier, that way you don't end up with shaker toppings all over the place. The kit includes the outline die along with the frame die. So this first red polka dot paper is cut out using one of the outline dies. I'm just going to adhere that to the card front. And then I'll take the foam, remove the backing on one side. This is really simple to use since it is self-adhesive. And I just made sure to line up the foam with the card base. Now for the shaker toppings, I'm starting off with some of Queen & Company's buttons. I have a few different varieties. And then I have 3 different shaker toppings. I'm using some of the pops, the jelly gems, and also the red diamonds. Figured I'd stick with just red colors and kind of made a little bit of a mess with those diamonds. And I just give the card a light shake just to even out the toppings. I also make sure there aren't any extra toppings on the buttons, because once you seal it all in place, it's hard to remove those and then you'll end up with a little extra bump. And then I removed the backing on the other side of the foam and adhered the acetate. So now all of those toppings are sealed in place. Now I'm using some liquid adhesive and putting it along the foam area, and then I can attach the frame. For the watermelon, there are 2 different die cuts to assemble. So you have the inside, the fleshy portion of the watermelon, and then the outside rind. So I'm just making sure those are lined up, pressing them in place. And now for the sentiment, I've already gone ahead and stamped this out. This is Sweet Summertime. I stamped it on one of the stitched sentiment die cuts. This is from Queen & Company's foundation dies. And I also cut out a larger sentiment banner just in some green cardstock. So to embellish my card, I pulled out a few different flowers. These are all by Queen & Company. I'm just trying to decide if I want to put more than one. I really like this red plaid. I keep trying to add in one of the greens and it just didn't look quite right. The balance looked off, so I decided to just go with the red. To adhere the banner to the card, I just put some liquid adhesive on the back, and I'm still trying to decide if I want to add this other green flower. It's really cute, but it just didn't go. To adhere the red flower to the card, I'm using a large glue dot. And now it's time to add the seeds to the watermelon. So the kit does include one tiny die to cut out these seeds. So be very careful you don't lose this die. And I cut these out using some specialty black mirror paper. I thought it would add a pretty shine. And I just laid them on my card first. And now I'm using an embellishment wand to adhere them. So I'm just picking them up, putting some glue down, and then placing the seed on top of the glue. That way I don't get my fingers all messy with the liquid adhesive. And I am putting just a little bit of glue behind 2 of the petals just because they were sticking up slightly. So there is the finished card, but then I did change my mind. I figured it needed some bling. So I pulled out some of the green jelly gems and I'm just adding 2 of them around that sentiment. So there is my finished card. So this is card number 1. Now moving on to card number 2. I'm using the same paper collection. This is the Petite Patterns, but for this card I've selected pink and also the teal. I thought it would be fun to make a non-traditional watermelon card. So I'm using that pink polka dot paper for the background. I'm going to go ahead and attach my foam. And I do have several different pieces cut out for the frame of the card, and you'll see why in just a bit. So first I'm going to fill my card with an assortment of shaker toppings. I have some pink, white, and then also some teal. But I did decide not to add those teal jelly gems. I didn't really like the look. I thought it would look much better just to have the pink and white toppings. So I have some pops, some pearlies, and also some pink diamonds. When I remove the backing on the foam, I do put my finger inside the card just to make sure it doesn't go flying, because those shaker toppings make a huge mess. So now it's all sealed in place. I can go ahead and attach the frame. I'm going to lay out the pieces before I start using any glue. So I have that teal for the background, and then I have this glitter cardstock for the inside part of the rind. So I'm just snipping off the very top of this pink frame, but then I realized I did it wrong. I needed to have that teal glitter paper go all the way to the end. So I did go and cut another piece out, and now I'm cutting it correctly. And then for this pink piece, I'm just going to cut off the very top. So that'll have the flesh part of the watermelon, and then the two teal pieces will be the rind. So I'll attach the pink piece first, and then I'll use the glitter. And this glitter paper was sold by Queen & Company. They don't have it any longer, but I love the color. It matches so nicely with their paper collections. And then once that's in place, I can attach the very outside rind. I'll just put some liquid adhesive on the foam area. And the nice thing about Queen & Company sheer glue is it does have a little bit of wiggle room, so you can move those pieces slightly before the glue dries. I am wiping away any excess glue that kind of seeps out the sides. So next I'm going to work on the sentiment. I've already gone ahead and stamped this out. It is Sending Sweet Summer Vibes. And I stamped this in some pink ink on one of Queen & Company's sentiment banner die cuts. Then I also cut out a heart and a flower. These are also from Queen & Company's foundation die sets. And then I'm going to tie a bow using one of their trio trims. This is the blue color. I'm just tying the bow independently, and then I'm going to be placing it underneath the heart and the flower. I'm just trying to figure out placement, and then I can trim down the tails of the bow. And then to adhere the bow, I'm just using a small glue dot. I'm going to place that on the left side of the sentiment. And then the heart will go right on top. Now just to even everything out, since that heart is going over the knot of the bow, I'm going to put a small piece of foam dimension on both sides of the bow, and then the heart will go right on top. And I am going to put some liquid adhesive on the back as well, and that'll also make sure that the twine isn't going to slip away later. And then to attach this, I'll just put some liquid adhesive on the back. I was just trying to tuck in some of the foam that was peeking out. I can adhere that to the front of my card. And then just one final finishing touch, I'm adding one of the pink ice flowers in the center of that flower. So there is my finished card, and I really like how this one turned out. Who wouldn't want a pink watermelon? So now moving on to card number 3. I have 3 different paper collections that I'm combining for this card. I'll be using a sketch from Queen & Company, and their sketches were designed to go with their foundation die sets. So all of those stitch pieces you see on the sketch, there is a die that matches it. Queen & Company sells 5 different die sets. They are so much fun and probably my most used dies. Now I am changing this sketch up just a little bit. I have a tone-on-tone yellow paper for the background. I believe that was from the Pretty Presents. And then I have this stitched banner with a bunch of fruit. It's got some watermelon, strawberries, lemons, and limes. That is from their fruit basket collection. And then also this tone-on-tone lime paper. So those are the 2 sentiment strips. I'm just going to layer all of this in some red cardstock. Now for the sentiment portion of the card, I wanted to add a little more color. So I've stamped out the sentiment on some white cardstock. This is "You Are One in a Melon." I just used some red ink. And then I also have 2 different pattern paper strips. One of them I used Queen & Company's scalloped border die, and then the other is just a thin piece of pattern paper. And to adhere these to the card, I'm using some of Queen & Company's 1/8 of an inch red line tape. I'm going to put the red pattern paper right on top of the green. I just want that scallop portion to show. And I'm just trimming off the extra. So it went over the edge just slightly. And then I'll be adhering that piece right below the sentiment. So first I'll attach the sentiment, and this time I'm using Queen & Company's 1/4 of an inch red line tape. And if you ever use red line tape, make sure you get the placement correct, because this does not come back up easily. It will rip your paper. So now I can attach this little scallop piece using some more of the 1/8 of an inch red line tape. And I like how this just adds a little extra detail to the bottom of the card, and it also ties in more of the red and green. Now you may be wondering how I'm going to fit that watermelon on this card. There are several of the shaped card kits that do fit nicely on an A2 size card, but I am going to do something a little different on this card. So I have some white pearlescent paper, and I cut out this scallop circle die cut. I'm going to pop this up using some foam dimension, just making sure to get good coverage so there isn't an area that dips at all. Remove the backing, and then I'll attach that to the front of the card. So I'm using this circle instead of that hexagon. I needed a larger piece. So now I'm going to start working on the watermelon. So I have the 3 pieces all cut out. And I'm not going to have the very top piece where it has that little stitched frame. I do want to have just those 2 extra layers though for the rind, just for a little extra interest. So I'm attaching the outside piece first, and then I'll adhere this solid green piece. And this is not going to be a shaker card. It's one thing I love about Queen & Company's kits is you can make non-shaker cards just as easily. It really helps stretch out those dies and kits. So now that I have all of that in place, I'm going to cut just a portion of the watermelon. So I want just 1/3 of it. I flipped the image over, and then I'm just putting a little mark where about halfway point is on this watermelon. And then I'm just cutting out that chunk in the middle. I'm trying to make it as straight as possible. This doesn't have to be exact. I did feel like that right-hand side needed to be trimmed down just a little bit more. So I'm just using my scissors to trim down a sliver off of that right-hand side. So this watermelon will just adhere right onto this scallop circle. Just trying to decide if I want it facing up or to the side. And then next I'm putting some liquid adhesive on the back. And then I'll just adhere it directly onto my card. Once I have that fairly straight, I can add some of the watermelon seeds to the card. So I still have some extra of those black seeds using that mirror paper. And I'm just going to put 3 of them on this card. I'm trying to line them up. And it's hard to see, but the seeds do have different ends. One of them has a little bit more of a point, and then the other side is rounded. So I didn't notice at first the seed on the left was the opposite direction, but I was able to correct that before the glue dried. I'm just peeling it up and then flipping it around. It's not really obvious, but I noticed it, and I think it would have bothered me if I didn't fix that. So now to finish off the card, I'm going to add a few embellishments. I'll start by putting a double bow using the red and white twine. I'm just tying this freely. And I didn't like the first bow, so I did untie it. I think it was a little harder to do with just that one piece, so I did snip the ends, and now I'm trying to do the bow again. So I just need a really small bow since it's going to go in this upper right hand corner. I just trim down the tails, and then to adhere it to the card I'm going to use a small glue dot. And I did fold the glue dot in half. I don't want any of it poking out because it will catch onto something later with that adhesive. And now I pulled out some Queen & Company bling. I have a few different varieties. I have some of the green ice flowers, putting those on both sides of the sentiment. And then I was going to use some of these polka dot epoxy dots, but I changed my mind. Instead, I'm just going to use some of the yellow jelly gems. I'll put a couple of them in that upper right hand corner and then a few more on the left hand side. I'm just readjusting a couple of them in that lower left hand corner. I tend to change my mind quite a bit on the bling. But there is my finished card. This one was so fun to do, just modifying the original design with that half of watermelon and turning it into just one piece. So moving on to my fourth card and final card, I'm using the Simply Striped paper collection. I have some white pearlescent paper for the background, and I'll be layering that on that green stripe paper. And then just to add a little more color, I have two thin strips of pattern paper. I have some green and white stripe paper. I'll put that one down first. I just use some of the red line tape on the back side. And for that second thin strip, I wanted to have the red and white diagonal stripes on the front, and I didn't notice I put the red line tape on the wrong side. So I'm even putting glue on the very end, and this is where I noticed, oops, wrong side. So I cut another piece, put the tape on the correct side. If I would have had just that red and white stripe underneath, I think it would have been a little too busy, so this toned that down. So I'll go ahead and put my card panel on that layer. So you just see a little tiny bit of that green stripe paper in the background. And I'll attach this to my card base. And now I'm going to work on the watermelon. So this is one of the kits that the die cut does fit nicely on an A2 size card. You don't have to trim it down. It does fit a little nicer if you put it at an angle. It will fit straight across, but I like the angle. It has a little more interest to it. So I just adhered that to the card with some liquid adhesive, and I did cut this out using some specialty red satin paper. And then for the rind, I used Queen & Company's Rainbow Glitter Foam. I thought this added a really pretty sparkle. Now when you do run this foam through the die cut machine, it stretches it out slightly. So I did need to trim off just a little bit off of one of the ends. But the nice thing about the glitter foam, it is self-adhesive, so you just remove the backing and then adhere it in place. So I'm going to attach this last frame. I cut it out using that same red specialty paper, just gluing it in place using some of the liquid adhesive. So for the sentiment, I've stamped this on some green cardstock. This is Thanks a Melon. And I trimmed off the very end of this little sentiment piece, just so it would be flush to the right hand side of the card. And I'm just going to attach it using some of the red line tape. Now I'll add the watermelon seeds. So I cut out a bunch more of the seeds using that black mirror paper. So this card has a lot of shine and sparkle to it. And you can kind of see the lines from the glue I put on the back side of the paper. When it did dry completely, you can't see those lines anymore. And I'm using liquid glue along with my embellishment wand. Just makes it so much easier to pick up those small pieces without getting my fingers all sticky from the glue. I'm just putting them random directions, trying to make them look pretty natural. So finishing touches, I'm going to add one of Queen & Company's buttons. This is a green button, and then I'm just threading some red and white twine through it. I'm going to just tie a bow on the front, and I'm trying to keep the bow fairly small. This button is going to go on the right hand side of the sentiment, and I don't want that twine covering up any of the sentiment. Just trim off those tails. Try to figure out what direction I want to have it, and then I'll attach the button to my card using a large glue dot. Shortening that bow just a little bit more, trim it down. And then just finishing touches, I'm going to add some more Queen & Company bling. So I have 3 different styles. I'm using some more of the green ice flowers, and then some red frosties, and then also some of the black jelly gems. Just sticking with the same colors on the card. Queen & Company sells such a large variety of bling. I love all of the different styles. Although with all of those choices, sometimes it's hard to select what type to use on a card. So there is my finished card, and I love how this one turned out. Super shiny and sparkly. Now here's just a quick recap of the 4 cards I made using Queen & Company's watermelon shaped card kit. I have provided links in the description box for this kit along with the rest of the shaped card kits. And Queen & Company now sells the refills for their shaped card kits, so you can get more of the foam, acetate, and those shaped card bases. If you've never used one of Queen & Company's shaker kits before, I highly recommend them. They're so easy to use. And Queen & Company sells a huge assortment of shaker toppings along with their paper pads and bling. I still have several more of the card kits to get through. It's always hard to decide which kit to use next. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.